Hi, everybody, and good morning. Welcome to Storytime Live. And you might notice, yes, I've had my hair cut over the weekend. I've had what's called a buzz cut, right down to the wood, everyone. But the trouble is, boys and girls, now that it's turned very chilly outside, well, I've got to wear a hat because my head gets really cold when I go out now. Maybe that'll serve me right for cutting it so short. Anyway, speaking of hair, today's story is all about hair. I'm going to tell you a famous classic fairy tale, one of my favorites. It's called Rapunzel. Now, you might notice that a lot of the stories that I tell you have different beginnings, different openings. But for a fairy tale, there's only one way to start. You know what it is. Once upon a time, there was a young couple and they were very poor. The woman was having a baby soon, and there wasn't much work around. So they found with not much money, they were really having trouble getting food together, and the kitchen cupboards were getting barer and barer. One day, the lady was standing upstairs looking out of her window at next door's garden. And next door's garden was full of food, fruit, vegetables, salads. And one thing in particular that she really craved, one thing she really wanted, it was something called Rapunzel. Boys and girls, Rapunzel is an old name for a herb that has leaves a little bit like lettuce and a root a bit like a radish. And she craved it, and the more and more she looked out, the hungrier she got. It got to the point where there were only a few morsels left in the cupboards, and she said to her husband, "You have to go into the garden next door and grab some of that food." Now, there was a problem here, because next door was the last house of the village. You know what that means? That means there was a witch living there, and she was known to be quite bad-tempered. And the husband didn't like the sound of that. He says, "I don't know. I mean, we are very hungry. We haven't got much food, but going into the witch's garden, I'm not sure if that's a good idea." But another day passed, and now the cupboards were bare, and his tummy was starting to rumble. There was no other option. So that night, under cover of darkness, he scaled the great wall that surrounded the witch's garden. He was strong. Using his nimble fingers, he climbed quietly up the wall, over the top and down the other side, landed softly. He found the Rapunzel and picked some, and then a few other things as well, some lettuce, some tomatoes, a few bits and pieces. Surely she'll not notice. She has all this food to herself, he thought. Once he had his hands full, he carefully climbed back up the wall, down the other side, and back into the house. "Oh," he said, "that was scary. Don't ask me to do that again." Well, they had plenty of food now, and she started stuffing her face with all that lovely salad from next door. For the next couple of days, they were fine. Their tummies were well fed, all was good. But then the food started to run out again. The cupboards grew bare again. And once more, the woman stood at the window looking out, longing at the lovely food in the witch's garden. "Husband," she said, "you're going to have to go back." "Oh, I don't know. Do I have to?" I said, "Yes. Look, it was fine last time. Just sneak over. It didn't take you very long. Grab a few handfuls. Come back." So that very night, the husband did as he was told. Out he went under the cover of darkness, crept back up the wall quietly, over the top and down into the witch's garden. He just landed, was just picking himself up, when there in front of him was the witch. "You," she said, "what are you doing in my garden?" said the man. "You're in here stealing my food, aren't you?" said the man. Look, it's my wife, you see, she's having a baby, and we've got no food." "Ah, what right does that give you to come in here and steal my food? That's not right," she said, "and that's your problem, not mine." Well, after a while, she started to calm down a little bit. "I can make a deal with you," she said. "Tell you what, I can tell you that in 1 month's time, I know that your wife is going to have a baby girl. You can take all the food you like from here, but when the child is born, I will come and take her." The poor man was so scared that he agreed. What a terrible thing to do. He said, "Yes, okay." And he went and grabbed as much food as he could and went back over the wall and back home. When he told his wife what had happened, she was furious. "You've done what?" he said. "You agreed to that?" But then they thought about it. Well, the witch is bad, but surely she's not that bad. And the man's wife said to him, "Do you know, I think she was just trying to scare you, serve you right for going into her garden." And so they left it. And for the next month, all was fine. And the woman had a fine baby girl. However, the witch hadn't been making an idle threat. Almost as soon as the child had been born, the witch came and took the young girl away. The young baby was taken deep into the forest to a great stone tower which the witch had, and there locked in a room right at the very top. The witch named the child Rapunzel after the plant that her mother had so craved for. The child grew, year after year passed, and she grew in the tower. And when she was about 6 or 7 years old or so, she would sometimes begin to ask more and more questions. And she would ask the witch sometimes, "What's it like outside? I've been in this tower for years. I don't know anything else. What's the great wide world like out there? I can't see much from my window apart from trees." "Ah," said the witch, "there's nothing up there but badness. Believe me, my child, you're better here in the tower. I can look after you and keep you safe from all the bad things that are out there." But the child was curious, and with time she wanted to know more and more. The witch would tell her things and give her books and plenty of food and things to eat and drink. However, the witch wasn't really that good at raising children. One thing that she forgot to do was to cut Rapunzel's hair, and so her hair grew longer and longer and longer still as the years went on. On her 12th birthday, Rapunzel said to the witch, "Do you know, I really do want to learn more about outside. I think I might just go out and have a look for myself." "You will do no such thing," said the witch. And she did something terrible. She whispered words that neither you nor I could understand, magical words, and cast a spell across the tower. The stone staircase disappeared. The wooden door outside also disappeared and changed into solid stone. So now there was no way in or out of the stone tower. Now, when the witch wanted to get in and out, she had to use Rapunzel's hair. She would stand at the bottom and shout, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And dutifully, Rapunzel would let down the great golden braid of her hair, which was all tied like a rope, all the way down to the bottom, and the witch would climb up. And so more years passed. Rapunzel would spend her time sewing, reading, or standing at the window singing. And the more she sang, the more the birds of the forest would come and gather round, and they would sing with her, and it was a wonderful thing to hear. Some more years passed, and it was coming to Rapunzel's 18th birthday. One day, a handsome prince was passing through the forest when he heard a sound. The wonderful sound of singing, but not just singing. It was beautiful singing mixed with the sound of birds harmonizing with the song. He had to know where this was coming from, and he jumped off his horse and crept through the trees. And there, peering through, he saw the clearing and the great stone tower. And there at the top, he saw Rapunzel singing, and all the birds gathered around the tower and on the branches of the trees. What a wonderful sound, he thought. And for an hour, he just sat there and listened. Every day he came back, enchanted as he was by the beautiful song. And after a week had passed, when he was sitting listening and watching, he saw something. The witch. He saw the witch come to the tower. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," she called. The hair came down and the witch climbed up. Ah, thought the prince, so that is the answer. That is how you get up into the tower. But who is this strange girl? Why is she living on her own up there? Why is she here in the middle of the great forest? He had to find out. So, as soon as the witch had climbed down, he decided to go and try for himself. Mimicking the witch's voice as best he could, he shouted, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." It wasn't a very good impression, but it must have been good enough, for Rapunzel let down her hair, and he climbed up to the top and over. Rapunzel got a terrible fright when she saw not the witch, but this young man standing there. Remember, boys and girls, she hadn't seen another human up to this point. "Who are you?" she asked. "Don't worry," said the prince, and he calmed her down. "I'm a friend. For the last week, I've been standing outside, listening to your beautiful singing, and I had to find out who you were." The prince had fallen very much in love and wanted to know more about Rapunzel and why she was there. Rapunzel explained that she'd been there all her life and knew nothing of the wider world. "Oh," said the prince, "it's a wonderful place. There's all sorts of lovely things out there for you to see." "Oh, but I'm trapped here. The witch tells me that it's a terrible place," she said, "and there's nothing good for me. How can I believe what you say?" "Well, I have to try and persuade you," said the prince. And so, as the days went on, the prince would come and continue to visit Rapunzel, and he'd tell her stories and wonderful things about the wider world. Another week had passed, when one day the prince was sitting, and he said, "I think I know what I can do to persuade you. I have something for you here, a gift, something that I know you'll have never seen or tasted, and I brought from my kingdom. It is called chocolate." And he took out a little parcel and he handed it to Rapunzel. She opened it and looked at it and smelt it. "Oh, it smells very nice," she said. "You eat it?" "Yes," he said, "you eat it, try some." And she took a piece and popped it in her mouth. She said, "Wow, that is delicious. And you get this in the wide world." "Yes," said the prince, "and other nice things too." "Well," she said, "now you've persuaded me. It must be a wonderful place out there. If you can get this chocolate, I want some more." "Well," said the prince, "you must come with me to my kingdom. But how to get you out of the tower? How can we get you out of here?" "Well," said Rapunzel, "I can lower you down on my hair, but I can't leave." "I know," she thought. "Next time you come, you must bring me some silk. Every time you come, bring me some more silk. And what I can do is gradually make a rope. Silk is nice and soft and squashy. I can hide it somewhere where the witch will never find it." And so it was. Every time the prince came, he brought some silk, and Rapunzel gradually made a longer and longer rope until she thought it was just about long enough. The next day, when the witch was visiting, she was up in the tower, and she said to Rapunzel, "Do you know, I wish you'd stop that horrible singing. Oh, it's painful to my ears." "Oh," said Rapunzel, "well, all the birds seem to like it. Listen, you can hear them outside, and my prince likes it." "Oh, say that again," said the witch. "My prince likes it?" "I knew there was something up," said the witch. "I should have known. All these years I've looked after you, protected you from the outside world, and this is how you repay me. Well," she said, and she started looking around the room. It didn't take her long to find the silk rope that Rapunzel had been making. I knew it. Right, she said. Using magic, she created in her hands a pair of scissors, and she took the scissors and cut Rapunzel's hair, all of her lovely long hair, in one snip. Gone. Right, she said. You will never see that prince again. Casting an even stranger spell, she put a terrible enchantment on Rapunzel, and she was banished away from the tower and off far, far away to a hot, dry desert. Right, said the witch, now for some fun. And she waited. It wasn't long later that the prince arrived. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair, he called. The witch, of course, had Rapunzel's hair still that she'd cut off, and she lowered the braid down to the ground. The prince climbed it right to the top, but to his horror, what a nasty surprise he got. There, not his beloved Rapunzel, but the witch. Ha! She said, you were expecting to see your Rapunzel, but let me tell you, she is not here now. She is off in the desert. You will never see her again. With a little push, the witch nudged the prince, and he fell backwards all the way down to the ground. Fortunately, he landed in a great bush, and that gave him a sort of soft landing. Unfortunately, it was full of thorns, and the thorns scratched his eyes, so that now he was blind and he couldn't see. Over the days and weeks that followed, the prince had to crawl his way through the forest, guided by his strong sense of smell, and also helped by the friendly birds who knew him to be a friend of Rapunzel. For weeks and months he crawled through the forest until he could feel that something was changing. The ground was getting drier and rockier and sandier. And then, one day, he heard a sound that made his heart sing. He heard the voice of somebody singing wonderful songs. It was, of course, Rapunzel. He called to his beloved, and she called back, and it was only moments later that they were arm in arm together. Rapunzel cried tears of joy, and some of the tears landed on the prince's face and onto his eyes, and they immediately cured his vision, and he could see again. They could see each other. Together, hand in hand, they worked their way back to the prince's kingdom, where they were married, and as king and queen ruled over the kingdom, and of course lived happily ever after. There you go, boys and girls, the story of Rapunzel. That, boys and girls, is a famous fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm, and they've written a lot of the famous fairy tales that you'll have heard. Now, I've got some great stories for you for the rest of this week. So tomorrow we're going to have a little folk tale that comes from Africa. It's a really nice one. It's quite funny as well. I think you'll enjoy it. So join me for that one. On Wednesday, we're going to do a local folk tale, one that actually comes from Durham. And then on Thursday, a folk tale from a country called Hungary, which is a part of Europe. And that's a nice little folk tale all about two kings and a competition that they have together. So join me for those during the week if you like. But that's it for today, everybody. Goodbye, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.